everyone, and welcome back to more Umineko When They Cry. In the last video, it was very focused around the portrait that's in the main hall, the portrait of Beatrice, who is apparently the witch of Rokkenjima. So, it was very interesting to hear about. I recommend going back and watching it if you haven't. If you haven't anyway, why are you watching this part? But regardless, let's get on with the story. We walked up to the huge double doors that led to the dining room. Genji-san knocked. The doors were opened and we were invited inside. The dining room, which looked exactly like you'd imagine a rich person's dining room to be, had a super long table that was obviously positioned with no purpose other than to make the guests conscious of their rank. Our parents were already sitting in accordance with that ordering. The old bastard pressed us to sit. The only gaps in that group of people were the spots we were supposed to sit, which only made us feel our tardiness all the more. The seat at the head of the table, called the incipient's chair, was for the most highly ranked, reserved for grandfather. It was still empty. He probably wanted to show up last for dramatic effect. From the perspective of someone facing the incipient's chair head-on, the seating order went from left to right, with the lower-ranking seats progressing in rows of two further away from it. So the left-hand side of the first row, closest to the incipient's chair, was where Uncle Kraus should have sat, since he was the second highest in rank. It looked like he hadn't arrived yet, so that seat was empty. So Rudolph's complaining that we're tardy, but like the most direct heir to the family isn't even here. Across from his chair, on the right side of the first row, sat the eldest daughter of the family, Aunt Ava, who was the third highest in rank. The left-hand side of the second row was for the fourth highest in rank. There sat my damned dad Rudolph, the third of the siblings. Across from him, on the right side of the second row, sat Aunt Rosa, the youngest sibling. I like it that it's in order of birth and not patriarchal. I don't know, it's nice to see that the women have just as much chance to take head of the family. I'm not feminist or anything. At this point, you might expect their husbands and wives to come next. But nope, the left-hand seat in the third row, rank number 6, belonged to Jessica. Opposite her was Georgianiki. I sat next to Jessica. And Maria sat across from me. See, that makes sense to me because obviously they'd rather give the head of the family to a blood relative probably than a relative by marriage. Then finally, next to me on the left-hand side of the fifth row, sat Aunt Natsuhi, the 10th highest in rank. Opposite her was Uncle Hideyoshi. Next to Aunt Natsuhi, in the 6th row and the final seat on the left-hand side, sat Kirie-san. The seat opposite to Kirie-san was empty, even though silverware had been set there and everything. According to this ranking system, that spot was where Aunt Rosa's husband should be sitting. Even though he wasn't supposed to be coming, his place was made up. Normally, ranking systems of this sort give spouses equal positions as their partners, but the Ushiromiya family system was unique. Maybe it's a remnant of male chauvinism. If you start with the assumption that a woman's womb is just something to be borrowed, then the children of direct descent would come first, directly followed by the grandchildren. In other words, spouses have no blood ties and are therefore placed at the end of the line. It's terrible, but by this system my grandmother would be ranked even lower than me, if she was still alive. So she wouldn't even get to sit next to her husband. In their youth, they obey their father. After they get married, their husband. After aging, their children. There's the old saying, women have no home in any realm. Oh, okay, I thought it was equal, but maybe not. Long ago, when I was still incapable of figuring all this out, I thought it was so great that we could all chat in our little groups, adult siblings with adult siblings and cousins with cousins. However, now that I can re-examine the seating order after growing up a bit, it stirs up some very complicated feelings in me. Aunt Natsuhi, who was married to the eldest son and was the de facto number 2 in managing this family, sat to my right, which meant that she was 2 steps lower than me in the ranking order. It was hard to imagine what might be going on inside her heart. That's why I made a small apologetic gesture towards her before sitting down.
お久しぶりですね、バトラ君。ずいぶん背が伸びましたね。
ああ、はい。食ったり食べたり食事したりしてたらいつの間にかこんな身長に。
さすが男の子ね。身長はいくつくらいあるの？
180かな。つうかおばさん、そこは食べてばっかりじゃねえかって突っ込んでくださいよ。
え？ああ。ごめんなさいね。
I think Natsuhi's really cute. It's a shame she had such a guy at Shannon, because I might like her quite a bit more otherwise. After a short pause, she did laugh with me, but it seemed she couldn't quite figure out what she was supposed to be laughing at. This woman is Aunt Natsuhi. She's the wife of the eldest son of the family, meaning she's my father's older brother's wife. Is it simpler if I just call her Jessica's mother? It feels bad to say it like this, but while I didn't exactly dislike her, I didn't particularly like her either. She hardly ever spoke with us kids, and all my memories of her involve her talking to the adults about complicated things with a scary look on her face. In fact, since we hardly ever exchange words, I spent a long time trying to figure out how I should approach her, though my efforts seem to have ended in failure. The silverware sat neatly on the table, but the meal itself hadn't been brought in yet. As a general rule, you couldn't start a meal until the person sitting at the head of the table arrived. So, as long as grandfather didn't come, lunch would be put on hold indefinitely. Not even the appetizers would arrive. Simply put, the silence in this room was caused by our parents enduring their hunger while they waited for grandfather to arrive. How rude, he's making all of his guests starve just because he can't show up on time. However, the grandfather from my memories would always show up on time to meals like this. He was the kind of person who would never be so late that it kept everyone waiting, especially after the entire group had arrived.
遅えな、じいさま。俺の記憶じゃ時間に厳格な人だったと思うんだけどな。
Maybe he's having some health problems and that's why he couldn't quite make it just yet.
まあ、6年前はそうだったかもな。最近はそうでもねえよ。というか、もう自分の世界オンリーって感じで会食にも顔を出さねえぜ。さすがに今日くらいは足並みを揃えてくれるって思ってたんだけどな。まあ、私は来ない方が気楽で嬉しいけどよ。
It would be awkward if she said that just as he was coming in.
Jessica!
When her mother scolded her, Jessica stuck her tongue out and looked away. No way around it. Might as well wait until our host arrives. When I glanced at the clock, I saw it was almost 12:20. Ushiromiya Kenzo, the aged family head of the Ushiromiya head family. This man could be seen in his study. The clock had already passed noon, but he didn't even attempt to rise from his seat. With his spectacles on, he built up a growing pile of books with elaborate bindings, which he then read intently. I think this is actually the first time we've seen him with his PS3 sprite, because the first scene, we still hadn't patched it yet, so he looks interesting. He's got a very round head. You couldn't really say that he was having too much fun to stop. Rather, he filled the room with a sense of impatience, or perhaps a sense of impending danger, as though every second wasted was a tragedy. In this sealed room, a dense dust danced through the air, which was thick with the stench of chemicals that exuded a mix of suspicious odours. Those odours were somehow sweet and heavy. If anyone with a normal nose came in here, the first thing they'd do would be to open a window and ventilate this room. I just want to note he has the exact same picture of Beatrice on this wall as well. The knocking against the study door had been going on for a while. A voice calling "Father" sometimes mingled with the knocks. As Kinzo heaved a deep sigh, he snapped shut the old book in his hands and slammed it on the table. Then he yelled at Kraus, who was still knocking on the door.
やかましい。その音は止めん。叩けば扉は開かれると誰が教えた。そのバカ者は貼り付けにしたぞ。お前もそうされたいのか。
お父さん、年に一度の親族会議の日ではありませんか。皆下に集まっています。どうかおいでください。
I'm quite interested to meet Kraus because we still haven't actually seen him at all. Kraus called out to his father through the door. Kinzo always shut himself up in the study, hating it when nearly everyone, even his family, entered the room. For that reason, Kraus had no choice but to call to him from the corridor like this.
私にかがうでない。皆とは何か。私をここから引きずり出そうとする者どもなのか。ならば殺してしまい。バラバラにして巻きにして魔女の炉にくべてしまい。
I really like his voice actor actually. He sounds very, very sinister and old.
その炉には鍋をかけて苦いおもぎを煮るがいい。黙示録の煮汁はそれでも私をここから連れ出そうとするバカ者どもに飲ませてやれ。残りは酒につけるのだ。ああ、源氏はどこだ。源氏を呼べ。苦界の魔師を用意させろ。緑の妖精のささやきが届かぬ。ああ、源氏はどこだ。源氏を呼べ。
So I guess he has to be under the influence of alcohol to even bother dealing with his family at this moment in time. On the other side of the door, Kraus, Nanjo and Genji kept waiting for the master of the house, who stubbornly refused to come out. Oh, so this must be Kraus.
すっかり嫌われてしまったようだ。もう私の声では何も届かんよ。
Kraus shrugged as though saying it's no use and smiled bitterly. From the beginning, he hadn't really expected his father to respond to his calls. However, since it was the duty of the eldest son, he had tried as a formality.
金蔵さん、あんたの顔を見に息子や娘や孫たちが来てるんじゃないか。私、貴様など呼んではおらぬ。私は源氏を呼べと言ったのだ。
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I didn't actually press anything then, so I don't even know why it skipped the voice acting there.
さあ急げ、すぐに呼べ。時間は常に有限だ。人たちはすでにラッパを構えているぞ。なぜにそれがわからぬか、愚かな羊どもめ。
Kinzo slammed an old heavy book against the table over and over. That racket clearly expressed his great displeasure. Kinzo put his spectacles down and flew up from his chair. He spread his arms wide open as if to sing to a packed opera house, as if appealing to someone, and he yelled,
なぜだ。なぜにいつも私には邪魔が入るのか。すべてを捨てよう。すべてを捧げよう。その見返りに私は一つしか求めないというのに。おお、ベアトリーチェ。お前の微笑みをもう一度見られるならば、私は世界中から美少を奪い取り、すべてをお前に捧げよう。
Here we go again, crazy old Kinzo talking about that Beatrice again. That's all he cares about.
おお、イナゴの軍団長たちよ。世界中から美少を刈り取り収穫せ。
He really does sound like he has completely lost it.
全てが汚らわしい、全てが煩わしい。なぜこの貴重な一日に私は邪魔を受けねばならぬのか。源氏を呼べ。
It's quite a nasty cough you've got there, Kinzo. He sounded like a gremlin towards the end of that.
何を怒鳴ってるのかもさっぱりだな。もう頭がどうにかなっているのだろう。
クラウスさん、実のお父さんにそりゃあんまりじゃないかね。
It is sounding pretty darn true though, to be honest.
親父はすでに死んでいる。
Okay, for some reason Krause's sprite changed.
ここにいるのは親父だったものの幻さ。いずれにせよ本人にここを出る意志がない以上どうにもならんね。
金蔵さん。
Well, that's very unfortunate. I wonder why that happened. Choking coughs continue to pour from the study. Oh,
私は下に戻る。
back to normal.
ゴーダの自慢のランチをこれ以上無駄に冷ましてしまうことはない。親類たちにとって当家での数少ない楽しみだろうからな。
I mean, that is quite an impressive power that Krause has there, being able to change his physical appearance at will. I guess we'll just pretend it's a normal thing. Role-playing and all that. Krause spun around. He looked at his watch, mumbling and acting as though he had wasted time doing something he knew would be in vain.
源氏さん、親父殿がお呼びだ。相手を頼む。かしこまりました。南條先生、食事に行きましょう。いつまでもここにいると、この甘い匂いで味覚までおかしくなってしまう。
Without waiting for Nanjo, Krause went downstairs. Genji urged Nanjo to go and eat. Nanjo glanced between the study door and Krause's back as the latter disappeared down the stairs, then let out a deep sigh.
すまんが源氏さん、頼みます。
はい、お任せください。
お酒はなるべく与えないように。あれは常習性が強すぎる。源氏はまだか。何者が源氏を阻んでいるというのか。
Damn, he really likes Genji, almost as much as Beatrice.
源氏はどこだ。源氏を呼べ。
I guess because Genji's usually the one that brings the alcohol.
さあ、ここはお任せください。
すみませんな。
Nanjo bowed slightly and descended the stairs. Genji watched him leave, then knocked on the study door.
親方様、源氏でございます。
源氏か。何故私をこれほどに待たすのか。そこには誰もおるまいな。
はい、私だけでございます。
Kinzo returned to his seat in the study and pressed an old-fashioned switch on the table. After a small delay, the heavy sound of the door unlocking could be heard. Wow, I need one of those. So just a button that I can press so I don't even have to go to the door to lock it. Kinzo was convinced that his family wanted to make a mess of his study. Or perhaps someone had once opened the window for some air and ended up scattering things that to him were important research materials, leaving him in a terrible mood. Kinzo had outfitted his room with a formidable lock, preventing anyone from entering without his permission and thereby sealing himself in a jail of his own making. Genji, whom he trusted the most, was relatively free to enter the room, but even that didn't always hold. If Kinzo was in a bad mood, even Genji wouldn't be able to enter. Anyone else would be limited to holding a conversation through the door, unable even to see Kinzo's face. And most of the time, what they got could hardly be called a conversation. However, this didn't trouble the rest of the family much. After all, it just wasn't worth the effort to disturb the aging family head, who was impossible to please and always stayed shut away, immersed in his research. Taking advantage of his refusal to leave his room, they supported his isolation, putting his care entirely into the hands of the servants.
元気、いつものやつを頼む。私は忙しい。はい。
He didn't even try. Nanjo was like, try not to give him alcohol, and he's just immediately like, not going to pay attention to that. There, suspicious-looking bottles boasting venomous colours were on display. They were actually liquor, but considering the shady atmosphere of this room, one might easily suspect them of being some ghastly poison. Inside the study, the mysterious collection of books gathered by the Kinzo had grown into a mountain. They were bizarre, ancient or banned books, all of them either forbidden, cursed, or sealed. But if you tried to call them old books, Kinzo would fly into a rage and say, "Call them grimoires!" There were also many mysterious objects that presumably held some meaning with regards to black magic, like candles suspiciously melted and moulded into strange shapes. The constellations drawn on a certain celestial globe contained quite a few shapes that would draw puzzled looks from anyone familiar with today's night sky. The carelessly strewn about books contained many illustrations, all of them of a religious or mysterious nature, including some depicting demonically grotesque subjects or bizarre diagrams of various magic circles. And above all, a sweet, poisonous smell filled the room, profoundly assaulting the eyes and noses of those who entered for the first time. Eventually, it must surely make a person go numb and lose their grip on reality. Inside that study, Genji prepared Kinzo's usual drink with a well-trained hand. No one would even think of drinking such an ominous dark green liquid in that complex and ornate glass, unless someone first told them it was alcohol. He poured a little into the glass. Then he placed a cube of sugar in a strangely shaped spoon and poured water from a pitcher over it. Strangely, when the transparent water was poured, the dark green liquid turned a cloudy white. It was a strange optical illusion, as though the water had caused a chemical reaction and made the drink become even more unrecognisable as liquor. Then, Genji added original flavours Kinzo loved, fine-tuning its taste. There was no recipe. Its success was measured only by Kinzo's mood swings when he drank it, and it had taken Genji many decades to learn how to do it right. Genji placed the glass on a tray and walked over to Kinzo. By this time, Kinzo was gazing out the window.
どうぞ、親方様。
ああ、すまん。
Kinzo had regained his composure and was now unrecognisable as the shouting, screaming, yelling man from a few moments ago. Looking at this man from behind as he tilted his glass and gazed down at the scenery beyond the window, he projected a sense of dignity and intelligence. To allow Kinzo to set his glass down at any time, Genji motionlessly waited behind Kinzo and to his left, as though he were a living sideboard. Then, without averting his eyes from the window, Kinzo held out his glass. There was only a mouthful remaining. It was not a gesture intended to set it upon the tray, but a motion to hand the glass over to Genji.
飲め、我が友よ。
Okay, so he wants Genji to drink this suspicious liquor.
もったいないお言葉です。
私とお前の中に儀礼はいらぬ。飲め、友よ。
いただきます。
Genji respectfully received the glass and inclined it a little to taste its contents. After that, he gulped it down.
お前が作るのを 真似ているのだがどうにも同じ味が出ぬ。お前が作る方がうまい。
ありがとうございます。親方様のご指導の賜物です。
Kinzo smiled at his loyal subject, who refused to put aside rank even when asked to. However, he was not making fun of him. His smile was relaxed, as though chuckling at a close friend's old, unshakable habit.
互いに老いたな。年を数えることも忘れてすでに久しい。
今日まで過ごすことをお許しいただけたのもすべて親方様のおかげでございます。
Kinzo gave a faint smile, as if to say he didn't need any flattery.
今日まで本当によく私に仕えてくれた。息子たちは誰もが私を変人呼ばわりした。大勢いた使用人も皆私を恐れてやめていった。
I mean, that's just silly. He never leaves his room, so they don't even have to deal with him half the time.
お前だけが今でも私に仕えてくれる。
もったいないお言葉です。
私の余命もそう長くはあるまい。息子たちは私の遺産がいつ転がり込んでくるかをうろうろ待つハゲタカばかりだ。クラウスの愚か者は金を湯水のように使い、1枚の金貨を売るのに2枚の金貨を捨てておる。それで金を稼げたなどとも言んの。エヴァは金の亡者だ。あやつは私を鶏か何かだと思っておる。死んだらガラにして出汁まで取る気だ。ルドルフの間抜けは女遊びばかり。ローザはどこの馬の骨ともわからん男の赤ん坊など産みおって、ジェシカは無能で無学だ。ジョージには男としての器がない。バトラーは後宮家の栄誉を自ら捨ておった愚か者だ。マリアなど見るのも汚らわしい。
Oh, poor Maria. She doesn't even have a reason to be disliked. She's just obscene, apparently.
なぜだ、なぜに後宮の血はこうも無能なのか。私の築き上げた栄光を受け継ぐにふさわしい者はおらんのか。ああ、分かっておるとも。これがベアトリーチェの呪いであることも分かっておる。黄金の魔女め、それが私への復讐のつもりか。憎みたくば憎むがよい。逃げたければ逃げるがよい。逃がさぬ、逃がさぬ、逃がさぬ、逃がさぬ。お前は私のものだ。常に私の腕の中でなくてはならん。私の生涯のすべてなのだ。我が鳥かごにて永遠に私だけにささやき続けるのだ。
He was almost lucid for about 5 minutes, but now he's just devolved into Beatrice talk again.
ベアトリーチェ。
I think someone just needs to put Kinzo out of his misery at this point. After howling, Kinzo choked once again. Genji set the tray and glass down and rubbed his master's back. Genji's facial expression did not change. It was always like this.
すまぬ我が友よ。
When his seemingly deranged fit subsided, Kinzo regained his composure once again. It was like seeing two different people, a wild Kinzo and a composed Kinzo, living together inside one body.
私は決心した。このままぼやききった余生を怠慢に過ごすことなどもはや耐えられはせん。この身に最後にとするコインがあるならば、それを悪魔たちのルーレットに託してみたい。魔法の力はいつもかけるリスクで決まる。日本古来の呪術である牛の国参りがそうであろう。7日間儀式を目撃されてはならないというリスクを支払うからこそ魔力が宿る。困難なリスクが生じれば生じるほどに魔力は強く生じるのだ。神話に登場する数々の奇跡は天文学的リスクに奇跡的な低確率を得て成就した驚愕すべき魔力の結晶なのだと言える。モーゼが海を割ったのは神の奇跡ではない。蹂躙の計りに乗せられ軍勢によって後悔に追い詰められた絶対絶命のリスクが奇跡の魔力を生んだのだ。同じことが同じ規模で繰り返されようとも再び海が割れることはないだろう。しかし真に魔力ある者はその奇跡をつかみ取り神秘を成就させるのだ。もしも私にその魔力があるならば私はその奇跡をつかみ取るだろう。生涯を費やした願いを実現できるだろう。
Kinzo looked up to the sky outside the window. He spread his arms as if appealing to someone up in the skies.
もし私にその奇跡を手にする資格があったなら、おお、ベアトリー、ベアトリーって。お前の愛くるしい笑顔をもう一度だけ見せてくれ。どれほどの月日を経ようともお前の面影が消えることはない。ただお前の美少が見たい、それだけだ。お前から授かったものを全て返そう。あの日からの栄光を全てお前に返そう。富も名誉も黄金もいらぬ。お前に授かった全てを返そう。私はただお前の美少が見たいだけなのだ。ご賞だ、ベアトリーチェ。
His nonsensical yells became a scream and then a wail. Kinzo slumped to the floor, tearing at it with both hands. Genji had no choice but to wordlessly watch over his master's lamentations. Oh my god. I really wanted to end the episode, but I thought it was coming close to the end of... Yeah, sorry, I wanted Kraus to be able to say what he wanted to say. But I thought it was coming to the end of it, so I was like, yeah, we'll just power through. But damn, Kinzo's really lost it. It is exactly like he's two different people. One that's kind of sort of, you know, normal, and the other who just goes on and on about Beatrice. Damn. Just get over Beatrice. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end this episode here. If you guys have enjoyed, then don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. And until next time, guys, goodbye.